Because if you look at the halving cycle and you look at the supply-demand dynamics, you typically get a 4x move from the halving, and that implies 160, 170. And I think that that's something that can very much so happen. Bitcoin is roughly 1.5 trillion, so that's a 10x. I don't think it's going to happen immediately, but could you see a 10x in Bitcoin over 10 years? I do believe that. You'll have at least one, possibly two more halving cycles.
Anthony Scaramucci begins by discussing the current state of the Bitcoin market, focusing on the supply-demand dynamics post-halving. He explains that historically, Bitcoin experiences a significant price increase following its halving events due to the reduction in new supply. Scaramucci predicts that Bitcoin could reach $160,000 to $170,000, driven by these supply constraints and increasing demand. He acknowledges the potential for geopolitical shocks, but remains optimistic about Bitcoin's resilience and decoupling from traditional financial markets over the next 12 months. Scaramucci emphasizes the transformative impact that Wall Street can have on Bitcoin adoption. He recalls his experience at Goldman Sachs, highlighting how Wall Street's vast network of financial advisors and brokers can drive widespread investment in new asset classes. Once major financial institutions like Morgan Stanley begin promoting Bitcoin to their clients, the market could see significant inflows. This widespread adoption by institutional investors could propel Bitcoin to new heights, potentially surpassing gold as a store of value. Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space and drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
I do believe that, though, because if you look at the halving cycle and you look at the supply-demand dynamics, you typically get a 4x move from the halving, and that implies 160, 170. And I think that that's something that can very much so happen. I mean, are there geopolitical shocks that could hurt it? Possibly. But I also see Bitcoin decoupling over the next 12 months. So meaning, I don't think it's going to be as tied to the NASDAQ, or it's not going to be as tied to supply shocks like a Mt. Gox or a selling of the German government and things like that. So I think at my phone on me, I think it's between 15 and 16 trillion right now at current prices. And so Bitcoin is roughly 1.5 trillion. So that's a 10x. I don't think it's going to happen immediately, but could you see a 10x in Bitcoin over 10 years? I do believe that. You'll have at least one, possibly two more halving cycles. It will be embedded. Let me just say this one thing, and I think Dan and Gary would agree with me, because we've been on Wall Street a long time, and we worked at Goldman together. Wall Street is this magnificent selling machine. They get a hold of a product. What do? They pick up the phone, they call their clients, and they explain to their clients why they need to own the product. Dan's mentioning the Goldman Sachs Commodities Index. You were in fixed income. I was in equities. We were both working on that simultaneously to launch that product for Tim O'Neill back in 1990. So just imagine now thousands, tens of thousands of people all over Wall Street picking up the phone to call clients, institutions, on a consultative basis, on a hard selling basis, on a brokerage basis, the asset class known as Bitcoin. You haven't even seen that wave yet, and just watch what happens when the Morgan Stanley financial advisors get a hold of this thing, which is probably coming Labor Day weekend. That we're all sort of making. Bitcoin is fantastic, but if you can layer on a token economy, in addition, it will go way more exponential. It'll likely surpass gold because we've seen what token economies can do to other coins. And so the question is the technology there, and can you execute the technology on Bitcoin vis-a-vis a token economy? And the answer is yes. But I don't think, and I'll speak for myself, and maybe Dan and Gary will disagree with me, I'm not making the investment for that reason.
Correct.
I'm making the investment because this is sort of the purest store of value. If you study history and the history of money and the technology known as money, this is the purest store of value. And just 30 seconds on this. I'm writing a book for John Wiley called The Little Book of Bitcoin. And Michael Saylor has agreed to do the forward for me, which I'm very grateful for. And I went to interview Peter Diamandis, and he said to me, you remember meeting Hal Finney, don't you? And I said, actually, no, I don't remember meeting Hal Finney, but Peter Diamandis introduced me to Hal Finney. Of course, he was the first person to receive a coin from the Nakamoto wallet. And I met Hal Finney in 2014. Don't tell my children that I met Hal Finney in 2014 because I didn't buy any Bitcoin. But I just want you to think about what they did to perfect this and to decentralize it. And so you don't need the token economy. What you need is for people just to adopt Bitcoin as they are doing and just let it scale. And we'll be sitting here, there'll be a much bigger crowd in 10 years. I applaud him for embracing this technology and for embracing this commodity. I applaud him for it. And I'll tell you something that he's done for this industry, which all of us have to be grateful for. He's pushed the debate, okay? And so it was reported, so I'll share it with you. Mark Cuban, myself, Michael Novogratz, representatives from Kraken. We had a whole group of people, not just Kraken, but others. Mr. Garlinghouse was with us. We sat with Ro Khanna, other members of the Congress, Senator Gillibrand, Anita Dunn from the White House. And I don't think we're having that meeting with the Democrats without Donald Trump. And so I want to applaud the president for that. And I'm hopeful that we can push the Democrats into the swimming pool with us. And I'll just conclude by saying this. It's in the interest of the industry and all the Bitcoin holders out here and people that believe in the long-term prosperity that we can garner from digital assets, that we make this bipartisan. We want this regulation to be propitious and bipartisan. And I think President Trump deserves the credit for moving people into the middle on this.
Scaramucci introduces the idea of a strategic asset reserve for Bitcoin, akin to national gold reserves. This concept involves the government buying and holding Bitcoin as a strategic asset, which could significantly boost its market value. He mentions rumors that former President Trump might discuss this idea, suggesting that such a move could be highly beneficial for Bitcoin's market dynamics. Scaramucci sees this as part of a broader trend where Bitcoin is increasingly recognized as a valuable asset class. Scaramucci envisions a future where financial advisors routinely recommend Bitcoin to their clients. He highlights recent developments, such as Jersey City's mayor announcing a 2% Bitcoin allocation for the city's pension fund and the state of Wisconsin's $150 million investment in Bitcoin. These examples demonstrate growing institutional interest in Bitcoin, which Scaramucci believes will drive significant price appreciation.
Selling by the German government that forced prices down to the 53,000 level. You've also had the distribution of Mt. Gox, Joe. This is probably $9 billion or so dollars worth of Bitcoin was distributed. Most people got their coins this week. People like myself and Skybridge are getting our coins next week. Although I think those people will mostly hold Bitcoin. But I think the message here is that we need to make Bitcoin and the regulation around blockchain and cryptocurrency bipartisan. And so Mark Cuban, myself, Michael Novogratz, we were down in Washington a few weeks ago speaking with officials at the White House, explaining the danger of the Gary Gensler, Elizabeth Warren anti-crypto approach. And so hopefully that message is getting through. We almost had Vice President Harris at the Bitcoin conference. I know the guys that run that conference are sore at her, but her schedule is overwhelming at this moment, and it's a miss for her. She should have been there, but I understand why she wasn't. But I think by and large, if we can get the regulatory policy, Joe, around Bitcoin and crypto assets in sync, I think you've got a bull market next year coming for these assets. Yeah, so I don't have that calculation off the top of my head, but the U.S. government currently owns about $12 billion worth of Bitcoin at these market prices. I'm sure gold is exponentially larger than that. But what I think Bobby Kennedy is saying, which I like and which I have been saying for the last 4 years, is that Bitcoin is actually an asset class. And so if you step out and think about it as an asset class and you compare it to things like gold, Well, gold has, depending on the markets and current prices, $15 to $17 trillion worth of market value. And Bitcoin is sitting somewhere at 1/10 of that. And so over time, and I think this is one of the big arguments that the ETF holders are making and the people that are pursuing the idea of selling ETFs to individual investors, that this is an asset class. You should own 1% to 2% of it in your portfolio. And over time, it should trade to, if not exceed, the price of gold. I actually think, it's going to go one way or the other. I do think this will be bipartisan. If Vice President Harris wins the election, I think she moves to the center on Bitcoin regulation. If Donald Trump wins, there's a rumor that he'll be talking tomorrow about creating what Bobby Kennedy's talking about, which is a strategic asset reserve for Bitcoin, where the government would actually step in and start buying it, which obviously would be very beneficial to Bitcoin. But Joe, I think it's a very simple story, very simple catalyst. You have a reduction in supply as a result of the halving. The network is only sending out 450 coins now. In April or prior to April, it was 900 coins. And you've got huge ETF inflows. I think the BlackRock ETF has exceeded the QQQs this year in terms of net inflows going into Bitcoin. So this is a supply-demand equation. You have to remember the Wall Street engine hasn't turned on yet. There are wirehouses talking about onboarding these ETFs. Joe, you and I have been around a long time. We know Wall Street is a selling mechanism. It's a selling machine. Just imagine legions of FAs and financial consultants explaining to people that they need to own some Bitcoin. And just briefly, Jersey City, the mayor there just announced that he wants a 2% exposure to Bitcoin in his pension fund. The state of Wisconsin disclosed, I guess, last month, $150 million going into Bitcoin. And I think you'll see Bitcoin becomes part of that global tactical asset allocation portfolio for investors, institutional and individual investors, and that will push the price up. And again, if you believe like we do at Skybridge that it's an asset class, Joe, it's too cheap where it is right now.
Scaramucci remains bullish on Bitcoin's long-term prospects. He believes that as more institutional and individual investors recognize Bitcoin as a distinct asset class, its market value will continue to grow. Scaramucci predicts that Bitcoin's price could eventually exceed that of gold, driven by increasing adoption and the unique advantages of digital assets. He concludes by stressing the importance of viewing Bitcoin through a long-term lens, focusing on its potential to transform the financial landscape. Anthony Scaramucci's insights offer a compelling vision for Bitcoin's future, emphasizing the role of Wall Street, regulatory frameworks, and technological advancements in driving its adoption and value. By understanding these dynamics, investors can better navigate the evolving landscape of digital assets and capitalize on the opportunities ahead. Please like and subscribe my channel.